My roommates called me their personal maid, so I watched their nightmare unfold. You've been sick for 3 days, and there's nothing to eat in this house. That's what Blake screamed at me while I was curled up on the bathroom floor of our Chicago apartment, burning with a 102-degree fever. The cold tiles pressed against my cheek as waves of nausea rolled through my body, but his voice cut through my misery like a knife. The dishes are piling up, the trash stinks, and we have people coming over tomorrow, Chloe added from the doorway, stepping over my trembling legs to grab her Urban Decay palette from the counter. Her designer heels clicked against the marble as if I were nothing more than an obstacle in her morning routine. That's when it hit me, something was very, very wrong with this picture. My name is Jessera, and for 2 years, I'd been living what I thought was a normal roommate situation in our upscale Lincoln Park apartment. Every morning at 6 a.m. sharp, I'd drag myself to the kitchen to make fresh pancakes, bacon, and coffee for 3 grown adults. I'd grocery shop at Whole Foods every Sunday, my cart overflowing with organic produce and artisanal breads that my roommates devoured without a second thought. I handled the ComEd bills, scheduled the cable guy, coordinated with our building's maintenance team, and somehow convinced myself this was just me being a good friend. I'm really sick, I managed to whisper, my throat feeling like sandpaper. Then Tanner appeared behind them, his Northwestern University sweatshirt pristine, while I lay there in yesterday's pajamas. Yeah, but the house doesn't run itself, Jess, he said with the casual cruelty that had somehow become normal. You know we depend on you for this stuff. Depend on me. Like I was their mother instead of their 24-year-old roommate who worked just as many hours as they did. 3 working adults, Blake with his finance job at JP Morgan, Chloe with her marketing position at Leo Burnett, and Tanner fresh out of Kellogg with his consulting gig, all making significantly more money than my non-profit salary, standing over my sick body like I'd personally wronged them by catching the flu. When I finally crawled back to my room, questions flooded my fevered brain like a dam had burst. When was the last time any of them had touched our Dyson vacuum? Never. Who had scrubbed the bathroom they all used daily? Me. Always me. Who had organized the monthly deep clean of our stainless steel appliances? Who had color-coordinated our cleaning supplies under the kitchen sink like some demented Pinterest board? Me. Every single time. I grabbed my iPhone with shaking hands and opened my Chase app. The number that glowed back at me made my stomach drop harder than any flu symptom, $12,847. That's what I'd spent on household expenses in the past year, groceries from Trader Joe's, cleaning supplies from Target, utility bills, even the fancy toilet paper Chloe insisted on from that boutique store in River North. My Venmo requests to them sat there like digital ghosts: groceries, $127, electric bill, $89, cleaning supplies, $43. All ignored, or met with Blake's favorite response, "I'll get you next time, roomie." But there was never a next time. There was only me, their personal maid, finally waking up to the nightmare I'd been living. By day 2 of my flu, the rose-colored glasses I'd been wearing for 2 years completely shattered. I remembered last month when Chloe's boyfriend Austin came over for dinner. He'd walked through our apartment, admiring the spotless hardwood floors, the perfectly arranged throw pillows on our West Elm sectional, and the gleaming kitchen counters that reflected the Edison bulb chandelier I'd installed myself. "Wow, you guys really have your act together," he'd said, impressed. "This place is magazine ready." Chloe had beamed, running her manicured nails through her blonde highlights. "We just like to keep things nice," she'd replied with a casual shrug. "We." As if she'd ever held our Swiffer mop or knew where we kept the Murphy's oil soap. The memory made me laugh bitterly from my bed, which turned into a coughing fit that left me gasping. Austin had no idea that we meant me scrubbing baseboards at midnight after my shifts at the homeless shelter downtown. We meant me hand-washing Chloe's wine glasses because she claimed the dishwasher left spots. We meant me researching the best stain removers for Blake's protein shake disasters on our cream-colored rug. I pulled up my Photos app and scrolled through months of evidence I'd unconsciously collected. There was Blake's mess from his Sunday meal prep sessions, raw chicken juice on every surface, quinoa scattered across our granite countertops like confetti. There was Tanner's bathroom catastrophe after his weekend beard trimming sessions, tiny hairs coating our mirror like some abstract art installation. And Chloe's bedroom, visible through her always open door, looking like Nordstrom Rack had exploded. Yet somehow, every Monday morning, Austin and their other friends would arrive to an immaculate apartment that sparkled like a luxury hotel suite. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister Maya in Seattle. "How's the flu treating you? Are your roommates taking care of you?" I stared at the message for a long time. Taking care of me? Blake had yelled at me for being sick. Chloe had literally stepped over my body. Tanner had reminded me that the house doesn't run itself, as if I were a malfunctioning appliance rather than a human being fighting a 102-degree fever. When was the last time any of them had asked if I needed anything? When was the last time they'd brought me soup when I was sick, or covered my portion of a pizza order when money was tight, or even just said thank you for the countless hours I'd spent maintaining their lifestyle? I couldn't remember. Not a single instance. My laptop was still open on my nightstand from a work project, and I found myself opening a new document. I started typing, my fever-addled brain surprisingly clear. Things Jessera does for the apartment versus things Blake, Chloe, Tanner do. Under my column, I listed grocery shopping, meal planning, cooking breakfast daily, washing dishes, taking out trash, vacuuming, mopping, bathroom cleaning, organizing shared spaces, paying utilities, scheduling maintenance, buying household supplies, deep cleaning monthly. The list went on for 2 pages. Under their column, I wrote, pay rent. That was it. 3 people contributing exactly one thing to our shared living situation, while I handled literally everything else, using my own money and my own time. I closed the laptop and stared at the ceiling, a new emotion replacing the fog of illness. Rage. By day 4, the apartment had apparently become uninhabitable. I was finally keeping down crackers and ginger ale when my phone buzzed with a text from Chloe. The message came with a photo that made me do a double take, our kitchen counter with maybe 10 dishes scattered across it, the exact same amount they'd leave for me every single morning. This is absolutely disgusting, her text read. How do you expect us to live like this? I'm having my book club over tomorrow and I'm mortified. I stared at the photo, then at the timestamp. 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. These dishes had been sitting there for less than 4 hours, and suddenly it was a crisis worthy of all caps texts and shame spirals about her Lululemon book club seeing a few coffee mugs in the sink. When I finally emerged from my room that evening, wobbly but vertical, I found all 3 of them waiting in our living room like some twisted intervention. They'd arranged themselves on our sectional, the one I'd spent 3 weekends researching and negotiating the price on, with the serious expressions of corporate executives delivering bad news. Jessera, we need to have a serious conversation about your commitment to this household, Blake started, his voice carrying the same authoritative tone he used for client calls at his downtown office. He was wearing his favorite Ralph Lauren button-down, the one I'd taken to the dry cleaner 6 times because he kept spilling his morning protein smoothies on it. While you were sick, everything fell apart, Chloe added, crossing her legs and adjusting her anthropology cardigan. That's completely unacceptable for someone who lives here. I blinked at them, still processing. I had the flu. I could barely stand up. Do you know how embarrassing it was to cancel our dinner party because the house was a mess? Tanner jumped in, gesturing around our apartment like it was a condemned building rather than a space with a few dishes and an overflowing trash can. You could have cleaned it yourselves, I said quietly, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Tanner actually laughed, a sharp, incredulous sound that echoed off our exposed brick walls. If you wanted us to clean, you should have established that boundary from the start, he said, shaking his head like I was a child who didn't understand basic social contracts. But you volunteered to be our personal maid, Jess. You created this whole dynamic. Personal maid. There it was again. The phrase that had been rattling around my fevered brain for days. That's what you call it? I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. What else would you call someone who cooks, cleans, shops, and manages an entire household? Blake asked with a shrug, as casual as if he were discussing the weather. You made yourself indispensable, Jessera. You can't just stop because you got a little sick. A little sick. I'd lost 8 pounds in 4 days. I'd been so dehydrated they almost took me to Northwestern Memorial in an ambulance. We all get sick, Chloe said, rolling her eyes like I was being dramatic. But life goes on. Responsibilities don't pause for personal issues. The room fell silent except for the hum of our refrigerator, the one I'd stocked with their favorite kombucha and organic berries just last week. Anyway, Chloe continued, pulling out her phone and scrolling through what looked like a detailed list, you have 3 days to get this house back in order. 3 days. Like I was their employee receiving a performance improvement plan. The refrigerator needs restocking, we're out of everything. The bathrooms need deep cleaning, Mine has soap scum and I refuse to shower in there. And we're having Tanner's parents over this weekend for his promotion celebration. She looked up from her phone with the expectant expression of someone who just delegated tasks to their subordinate. I stood there in my wrinkled pajamas, still weak from fever, staring at 3 people I'd considered friends for 2 years. Blake was already back on his laptop, probably checking his stock portfolio. Tanner was scrolling through Instagram, double-tapping photos of his Northwestern buddies' vacation pics. Chloe was reapplying her glossier lip balm, completely unbothered by the fact that she just handed me a to-do list like I was their hired help.
His parents? I managed to ask.
Yeah, they're flying in from Boston, Tanner said without looking up from his phone. They'll be staying in the guest room, so that needs to be perfect too. Fresh sheets, those fancy towels from Pottery Barn, maybe some flowers.
You know how to make things look nice. The guest room.
The space I'd converted from a storage closet, painting the walls myself, assembling IKEA furniture at 2 a.m., buying artwork from local artists to make it welcoming. I'd even installed a sound machine and blackout curtains so their guests would be comfortable. That night, lying in my bed that still felt like it was spinning, I stared at the ceiling and realized I had 2 choices. Option 1, go back to being their unpaid household manager. Continue spending my non-profit salary on their organic groceries and premium cleaning supplies. Keep waking up at 6 a.m. to make breakfast for 3 adults who made twice my income. Pretend that being called a personal maid was somehow acceptable because I'd volunteered for the role by, what?
Being considerate? Trying to maintain a clean living space? Option 2, leave. But leaving wasn't simple. I'd signed a lease.
They needed my portion of the rent. Without my $1,200 monthly contribution, they couldn't afford our $4,800 Lincoln Park apartment. And despite everything, some pathetic part of me actually worried about them. How would Blake function without me reminding him to pay the electric bill? Who would buy Chloe's specific brand of almond milk from that overpriced health food store in Bucktown? Would Tanner remember to schedule the HVAC maintenance, or would they just let our heating system break down come winter?
They were adults, I whispered to myself in the dark. They'd survived before I moved in. But the guilt gnawed at me anyway. Maybe Tanner was right.
Maybe I had created this dynamic by being helpful, by anticipating needs, by taking pride in our shared space. Maybe I'd volunteered to be treated like the help by helping.
No.
I shook my head against my pillow, wincing as the movement made me dizzy. I'd never volunteered to be treated as subhuman. I'd tried to be a good roommate, and they'd exploited that goodness until I'd forgotten what normal looked like. The next morning, Blake knocked on my door.
I don't smell breakfast.
That's when I knew my decision was made.
And you won't, I said through my closed door.
The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the L train rumbling past our building 6 blocks away. Then came the knock again, more insistent this time.
Jessera, open the door.
I pulled on my Northwestern hoodie, ironic considering, and opened it to find Blake standing there in his usual morning uniform, pressed khakis, button-down shirt, and an expression of barely contained irritation that I'd seen him use on junior analysts at work.
Excuse me.
His face was turning that specific shade of red that meant he was about to launch into one of his legendary lectures about responsibility and accountability.
I'm done, Blake.
The words came out steadier than I felt. I'm not cooking, cleaning, or buying anything for this house anymore.
His laugh was sharp and humorless. Then you can find somewhere else to live.
For the first time in days, I smiled.
Already am.
The next 2 weeks were the most liberating 14 days of my adult life.
I didn't lift a finger. Not one.
I watched the house devolve into chaos from my room like I was conducting a social experiment. The breakfast dishes from day 1 joined the dinner plates from day 2. Coffee rings appeared on our reclaimed wood dining table, the one I'd spent months saving for and researching. Chloe's makeup exploded across the bathroom counter like a Sephora bomb had detonated. By day 3, the trash bags were stacked in the kitchen like a modern art installation titled Consequences. The smell hit you the moment you walk through the front door, a complex bouquet of rotting vegetables, spoiled milk, and that particular funk that happens when privileged people encounter
their own waste for the first time.
Jessera, please, Chloe begged on day 5, appearing at my door with mascara smudged under her eyes.
Just this once, could you clean the bathroom? I have a date tonight and I literally cannot shower in there. I laughed.
actually laughed out loud, which seemed to shock her more than if I'd slapped her. Blake tried the guilt approach. You're abandoning your commitments to this household.
This isn't who you are, Jess.
Tanner went full corporate, threatening to explore legal options for breach of verbal contract regarding household responsibilities.
I just kept laughing.
The beautiful thing about rock bottom is that it gives you perfect clarity. Sitting in my room, eating takeout pad thai and watching Netflix on my laptop while chaos reigned outside my door, I realized something profound. Their mess wasn't my emergency anymore. For 2 years, I'd been carrying the weight of 3 additional adults on my shoulders, convincing myself it was normal, that this was what good roommates did. I'd been so busy managing their lives that I'd forgotten what my own life looked like. When had I last read a book for pleasure? When had I last met friends for drinks without worrying about getting home early to prep tomorrow's breakfast? When had I last spent money on myself instead of organic groceries for people who saw me as staff? Outside my door, I could hear Blake on the phone. Mom, how do you? What's the setting for washing dishes in the dishwasher?
I turned up my Netflix volume and smiled. The revolution had begun.
Within a month of my departure from the apartment, the calls started. First, it was Blake.
Jess, we can't find a 4th roommate. Everyone who tours the place just leaves.
His voice carried a note of desperation I'd never heard before, the same tone he probably used when his stock picks were tanking.
Then Chloe, the cleaning service wants $200 every week. That's almost $1,000 a month. We can't afford that plus groceries plus everything else.
She sounded genuinely baffled, like she'd just discovered that household management was actual work that people got paid for.
Finally, Tanner, look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot. Could we work something out? A compromise.
I was sitting in my new studio apartment in Wicker Park, a cozy 600 square foot space that stayed clean because only one person lived there, when these calls came in. My new routine was beautifully simple. I woke up when my body wanted to wake up, made breakfast for exactly one person, and spent my money on things that brought me joy instead of maintaining other people's lifestyles.
What kind of compromise? I asked Tanner, genuinely curious. Well, what if we split everything equally? Like, we each take turns cooking and cleaning. I nearly choked on my coffee.
You mean like, normal roommates?
Right. Normal roommates. The audacity was breathtaking.
They'd spent 2 years treating me like hired help, calling me their personal maid, screaming at me while I was literally sick on the bathroom floor, and now they wanted to negotiate a return to basic human decency like it was some revolutionary concept.
I'll think about it, I lied, then hung up.
Through mutual friends, the updates trickled in like a slow-motion disaster film.
Week 6, they'd hired a cleaning service, but could only afford it bi-weekly.
By day 13 of each cycle, the apartment was back to looking like a frat house during finals week. Week 8, Blake's girlfriend Emma broke up with him after seeing the state of his bathroom. Apparently, she'd opened the medicine cabinet and found it stuffed with moldy takeout containers because he'd run out of space in the kitchen.
Week 10, Chloe got food poisoning from her own attempt at meal prep.
She tried to recreate my Sunday chicken and vegetable routine, but apparently didn't understand that raw chicken requires different cutting boards than vegetables. She spent 3 days in Northwestern Memorial, texting me from her hospital bed, "How did you make cooking look so easy?"
Week 12, the landlord showed up for a surprise inspection.
Let's just say that our security deposit was no longer refundable.
Week 14, eviction notice. Health code violations.
Apparently, the lack of proper trash management had attracted some new roommates of the 6-legged variety, and the building management wasn't amused. They had to split up because no rental company in Chicago would approve all 3 of them together after their eviction. Their credit scores had taken hits from the broken lease, and their references from the Lincoln Park landlord were less than glowing. Tanner moved back to Boston with his parents, a 26-year-old MBA living in his childhood bedroom.
Blake found a studio in a building that looked like a converted motel.
Chloe ended up with roommates who used actual chore charts and had house meetings
about toilet paper inventory.
The house had finally run itself, straight into the ground.
6 months later, I ran into Chloe at the Whole Foods in Lincoln Park.
She was standing in the cleaning supplies aisle, staring at the wall of products like she was trying to decode ancient hieroglyphics.
"Jessera."
She lit up when she saw me, then immediately looked embarrassed.
Do you know the difference between all-purpose cleaner and glass cleaner?" I almost felt sorry for her. Almost.
She looked tired in a way that expensive concealer couldn't hide, and her usually perfect manicure was chipped. The designer handbag was still there, but something about her whole presence seemed diminished.
Glass cleaner is for mirrors and windows, I said gently. All-purpose is for counters and surfaces.
She nodded like I'd just explained quantum physics, grabbing one of each.
I never realized how much stuff there was to know.
She paused, then looked at me with something that might have been genuine remorse.
I owe you an apology, Jess. A big one.
You do, I agreed.
We all do.
What we did to you, how we treated you, it wasn't okay. She shifted her weight, clutching her cleaning supplies like a shield. I kept telling myself that you volunteered for everything, that you liked taking care of us. But that was just me being selfish and lazy. I studied her face, looking for signs that this was manipulation, but all I saw was exhaustion and genuine regret.
The thing is, I said carefully, I did like taking care of people. I still do.
But there's a difference between choosing to help and being expected to serve.
She nodded, tears starting to form.
We turned you into our maid and then got angry when you got sick. We were horrible.
You were, I agreed. But you're learning now. The hard way. She laughed shakily.
My new roommates have this whole system.
Chore charts, shared grocery lists, equal responsibilities. It's like being an actual adult. Imagine that.
We stood there for a moment, surrounded by the overwhelming abundance of cleaning products that I'd once navigated with expert ease.
Are you happy? She asked suddenly. In your new place?
I thought about my morning routine, coffee for one, breakfast at my own pace, reading the news on my phone without anyone demanding to know when their eggs would be ready. I thought about my weekends spent at art museums and farmers markets instead of deep cleaning bathrooms and organizing other people's belongings. I thought about my bank account, slowly recovering from 2 years of subsidizing other people's lifestyles.
I'm learning to be, I said honestly. Turns out I'd forgotten what it felt like to live my own life.
Chloe nodded, understanding more than she probably wanted to.
Well, you look good. Rested. Thanks. Good luck with the cleaning supplies.
As I walked away, I heard her call out, Jessera?
Thank you.
For everything you did for us, even when we didn't deserve it.
I didn't turn around, but I smiled.
Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all, it's simply refusing to be anyone's personal maid ever again. Sometimes it's learning that your worth isn't measured by how much you can sacrifice for others, but by how well you can take care of yourself.
Sometimes it's just walking away.